Ed Norris, and Ed is from Lancaster, Massachusetts. He is the VP USA East for CERT, and I'm pretty sure Ed is a Boston Bruins fan.
Hi, I want to welcome everybody to my trophy meeting room. All right, so what I want to talk about is a series of games played by the Boston Bruins during the 1942-43 season. On January 14, 1942, the Boston Globe reported that a two-period game of current and former Boston Bruin players would play former NHL All-Stars, and that game would be played on February 6th. The January 14th letter to Herb Rowley, Boston Globe sports writer and Boston Bruins publicity director, to Marty Barry, who had played for the Bruins during the 29-30 to 34-35 season, states, "Rooms will be reserved at the hotel manager for all your expenses to be paid. All receipts over and above the actual expenses will be given to the Army Relief Society, which, in case you didn't know, takes care of widows and orphans of soldiers." The Army Relief Fund received $14,000 from the 14,662 fans who watched the game end in a 4-4 tie. Probably not to be outdone, on January 16th, the NHL Board of Governors announced that the American-Canadian Red Cross benefit game between the Boston Bruins and an all-star team would be held on March 17th at the Boston Garden to benefit those involved in World War II. The anticipated proceeds of more than $25,000 was to be divided with 5/7 going to the American Red Cross and 2/7 going to the Canadian Red Cross. Remember, there was 5 U.S. teams. Americans were still in the league at the time, in their final season. The game was canceled when the Red Cross explained, according to Bruins management, that it was against Red Cross policy to lend its name to such contests. The Bruins would make up for the cancellation during the following season, and the Red Cross policy was about to change. On October 14th, it was announced that the Boston Bruins planned to donate the proceeds of the 4 home games to support the war effort. The games were originally planned to assist the Army Emergency Relief Fund and the Navy Relief Society. The Boston Globe wrote that those 2 funds were no longer involved because of the Con Lewis affair. The American Red Cross would now benefit from those charity games. The Con Lewis affair was a decision concerning heavyweight championship boxing match between Billy Conn and Joe Louis scheduled for October 12th. Came on the heels, still raging over the manner in which the Army engaged its benefit football games with the pros. On October 25th, Secretary of War Harry S. Stimson, after a 24-hour investigation, canceled the fight on the grounds that it conflicted with the standards and interests of the Army. Stimson had met with the people in the War Department and officials with War Boxing Inc. about a plan to deduct $135,451.53 from the anticipated $500,000 to $600,000 in ticket sales to pay the debts of those 2 boxes. It didn't help New York 8th Representative Donald L. O'Toole denounce the fight on the floor of Congress as a mockery of the Army and charity. Later, the boxes agreed to cover their own expenses, but the fight was still off. The Bruins were informed by Executive Director of the Army Fund and a Public Relations Officer of the Navy that the service relief organizations were not allowed to grant permission to athletic organizations or any other groups to promote or publicize events to raise funds for the Army or Navy relief after November 15th. Events before that date needed to be approved by September 24th. The Bruins had just one of their charity games planned before the 15th, and they hadn't met the September approval date. In their 1942 and 43 Red Cross announcement, the Bruins noted that Walter Brown, the Boston Garden's president and general manager, would not charge the Bruins rent and would cover the overhead expenses for the 4 games. The Utica Daily Press wrote that under NHL regulations, visiting teams do not share in the gate receipts, so all the money was going to go to the Bruins charity. There was supposed to be 1 game per month. Boston newspapers reported the games would be with the New York Rangers on November 15th and on December 12th, Chicago Blackhawks on January 10th, and the Toronto Maple Leafs on February 8th. On the same day, the New York Times got it correct by reporting the games were playing with the Montreal Canadiens on December 12th, Chicago Blackhawks on January 12th, the Toronto Maple Leafs on February 9th, and the New York Rangers on March 16th. On October 13th, Joseph R. Hamlin, chairman of the Boston Metropolitan Chapter of the Red Cross, took a 24-hour option on the donation offer. Hamlin immediately contacted the National Red Cross in Washington, D.C. for approval. On October 14th, the Boston Traveler reported the fact that Ross is without a definitive answer on this proposition on the eve of his departure from Montreal for the preseason training complicated matters somewhat. Within another 24 hours, Uncle Arthur must start talking salary terms with his players, and he must know the score before any contracts are signed. The newspaper continued, if the Bruins find it possible to give away gate receipts to some established organization and also receive permission from the Treasury Department to act as an agent in this particular way, then the Bruins hockey players will receive salary cuts, figured on a 21-game home schedule instead of a 25-game home schedule. Art Ross told the paper, the players I've talked with said that they are willing to take less if our proposition goes through. The NHL was playing a 50-game schedule at the time, which meant the Bruins were donating approximately 6% of their revenue depending on the attendance. Accepting the Bruins' offer the next day, Hamlin said, is deeply grateful for this splendid contribution to our war fund. We are particularly grateful at this time in so much as the war fund, which is being conducted this March, is being held independently of any other drop. And our needs are greater than before. Again, we are deeply grateful to Mr. Adams, Mr. Ross, and the entire Bruins organization. The Boston Globe speculated that the amount the Red Cross would receive if the garden were filled, excluding standing room proceeds, with each game would be $18,900. With 2,000 standees, the figure would reach $20,900. It was on this basis that Ross set the probable figure of $75,000 to be realized from the games. This would be equivalent to $1.2 million in today's dollars. The Lowell Sun reported that the total amount was $70,000. It should be noted that between 1928 and 1968, the seating capacity of the Boston Garden was 13,909 for their hockey games. Art Ross pointed out that a direct gift would cost the Bruins $40,000 in taxes, which would result in a loss of more than $100,000. He then reported that the previous season the Bruins realized a profit of $9,100 after paying $7,000 in taxes. On November 10th, the Boston newspapers reported, or more likely corrected themselves, by stating that the schedule would be revised following anticipating approval of certain details by the United States Treasury Department. They also pointed out the home open against the New York Rangers would not be one of the Red Cross games. On December 4th, John L. Sullivan of the United States Treasury finally approved the donations. The final plans were outlined on December 7th at a Parker House luncheon with Charles F. Riley, General Manager of the 1943 War Fund of the Metropolitan Red Cross, Art Ross, publicist Frank Ryan, hockey writers, and radioists. Boston Bruins normally charged newspaper reporters and photographers to attend their season games at no charge other than a 10-cent tax. For these Red Cross games, newspaper staff would be charged for their admission. You notice on the bottom of this pass, it says it's not valid for any games played on for the Red Cross. It was also reported that to get into the Boston Garden, the players, officials, and hockey writers all had to purchase tickets to attend. There was an exception. Ross noted the Bruins had already admitted free to their games 6,700 servicemen and would likely handle over 25,000 for the season. Bruins are playing in their 19th season. The game against the Montreal Canadiens would be the first played in Boston during an afternoon. The game would have a 3 p.m. start time. The cost of tickets would be the normal prices. Berkshire Evening Eagle reported it was because the Boston team had to catch a 7 o'clock rattler for Detroit. On December 5th, the Boston Globe reported that the estimated total proceeds would be $60,000 instead of $75,000. Art Ross had promised even without the Treasury Department approval, the Bruins would have the 4 games and not sell tickets. The attendees would be asked to voluntarily give to the games. Charles F. Riley said the Red Cross chapter's quota for the year was $2 million, and the Bruins had made an extraordinary offer. On December 8th, the Berkshire Eagle reported the club was running about $23,000 less than the previous season. We haven't anything near a sellout to date, Art Ross said, but we're determined to get one for the Red Cross, not only on Saturday, but also with the 3 remaining dates. We'll be greatly disappointed if the Red Cross fails to realize a total of $60,000 on those 4 games. A few days before the game, Bill Schill left the Bruins with the team autograph stick to take a physical for the Canadian Navy. The Bruins were making no plans to replace him. Terry Reardon, who for the past 2 seasons was on loan to the Canadians from the Bruins, announced that this would be his last game as he was joining the Canadian Army. Both of those players would live until their 70s. On December 11th, the Boston Traveler reported an executive of the W.L. Douglas Shoe Company, who desires to preserve his anonymity, started the ball rolling for the Red Cross hockey affair by forwarding a check for $55, designating that $50.10 tickets be given to soldiers, sailors, Marines, Coast Guards, the Waves, and the WACs. Next, Sam Simon, the Boston Garden concessionaire, bought $100.65 tickets for the same purpose. Then the Montreal Canadiens tossed in 86 tickets of the $1.65 variety. And the Canadians also purchased 2 box seats for that game. On the slate for the game was pretty Boston society girl, Miss Leslie Blake Bittenbender, who would be giving a pint of blood in front of the game attendees between the first and the second periods. The Red Cross was hoping to attract more donors by showing it was a simple and painless procedure. During the second and third period, 30 uniformed Red Cross volunteers walked through the crowd, handing out pledge cards with many people signing up to donate blood. So in this photograph, we see Johnny Crawford with probably 2 of the ladies that would walk through the crowd handing out the cards. And this photo was taken on December 4th at a Bruins and Red Cross press event set aside for picture taking. In this photo, we see Frank Grimzik with 3 Red Cross volunteers. And they noted here they were all in different uniforms. This photo actually appeared in the Boston Traveler on December 5th. On the day of the game, the Boston Globe reported the contest would start at 3:30 p.m. to give defense workers who get through work at 3 o'clock a chance to get to the game. The Bruins expected a gate of $10,000 and lowered their estimate of a total to $50,000 for the 4 games. Maurice Richard and Almalak received special permission to cross the border for this one trip because Canadian authorities were anxious to cooperate with the Red Cross. The game was played on December 12th in an arena draped in Red Cross flags. The Bruins would be wearing their special Red Cross jersey with a Red Cross on each upper sleeve of the Bruins' white scripted jerseys. So is this the first alternate jersey? After all, the Bruins wore the jerseys for 4 games. It's not like the one-shots that we see in the American Hockey League, the East Coast Hockey League, and other hockey leagues. I couldn't find another alternative jersey, but you can see it. There's an actual game picture, so they are wearing it. Boston Globe wrote, when Jake Shuchuk fussed about his stick, Win Green said to him, "I'll make you a proposition. I'll give you $5 if you score a goal and $10 if it's the winning goal." So here's the game results. The Boston Globe broke, probably because they were unaccustomed to playing in broad daylight. The Bruins stumbled rather aimlessly for some 30 minutes at the Garden yesterday afternoon before they came to life to stage a second period scoring splurge. The Springfield Republican reported, during the 5th minute of play, Maurice Richard, launching the first shot fired either goal, beat Frank Bremlik with a straight shot after being fed by Terry Reardon at center ice. The Boston Globe also noted Flash Holick was forced once again to do a double tour at defense and at the forward line when Busher Jackson was unable to appear after aggravating an injury. Flash Holick netted 2, Jack Schmidt scored 1 for the Bruins, Gordy Drilling got 1 for the Canadians, with his being the last goal of the game, coming at 3:28. Jake Shuchuk tried hard, but Win Green's money was safe. Shuchuk was held pointless. The Bruins won the game 3-2. Canadians outshot the Bruins in this game 28-21, and there were just 3 penalties called, 2 of them being matching high sticking penalties. After the game, it was reported that the turnout was disappointing, as only 4,860 fans attended, and the proceeds were just $6,651.39. The Boston Traveler called the game a flopperoo, and then added, the game was a failure as far as attendance and crowd receipts were concerned. The newspaper also reported that the hockey patrons stayed away in large numbers from Saturday afternoon festivities. For that matter, the Boston Olympics and the Montreal Army game scheduled for that night drew almost double the attendance. The attendance for that night game was 8,586. It was hardly what the Bruins had hoped for. They were just 13.3% toward their goal of $50,000. On April 9, 1943, after the season was over and the playoffs complete, the Boston Globe reported the following. And the Bruins, despite their tendency to plead poverty, had a great year relative. The attendance was up, not down. The Bruins played $50,000, was actually $47,204.51 worth of hockey for the Red Cross. 4 games that were first-rate attractions. They did not palm off any so-what games on the Red Cross. But the Bruins break even for their 1942-43 season. The reason really the Bruins did not go to the cleaners after playing $50,000 worth of hockey for charity is because a lot of people are making good money at defense jobs. Money they never saw the color of before, and many of them have been going to the hockey games. It should be noted the so what games do not include a game against the Detroit Red Wings, who had finished first and 4 points ahead of the Bruins. The Red Wings also, unfortunately, won the Stanley Cup that year, beating the Bruins 4-0. The Bruins, so in the 4 games that the Bruins played, they had a record of 4-0. It's too bad they didn't play all the 25 games at home with the Red Cross. They missed their donation goal by $50,000 by $2,795.49, which is 5.56%. But more importantly, they raised a lot of money for the American Red Cross. The Bruins had 3 players on that roster who would go on to serve in World War II: Frank Brimzik, Jack Shuchuk, and Bill Schill. And all 3 players survived the war. At the Bruins breakup party on April 10th, Art Roth said about the season, "What pleased me most was when the Bruins turned over $47,000 to the Red Cross." Are there any questions?
Why do you think the Olympics drew the Bruins?
They claim it was the night game. So it was double. It certainly, it wasn't the same caliber of hockey, but maybe people, as they said, just weren't used to going to an afternoon game yet. So now when they have an afternoon game, it usually, it's packed. Lots of kids and everything else. They still start off slow in the afternoon games, though. That hasn't changed. No.
Did the players end up actually having their salaries reduced?
I haven't found the contracts to find out. So I'd have to find out the previous season and see what they got paid the next season. But yeah, I mean, they should. If you look at it, it should have got like a 16% pay cut. They seem to agree to it. Yes.
I believe Gallinger and Whitland both served in World War II.
Okay, but they weren't on that roster for those games. I don't believe they were. I'll have to double check that.
No, they weren't. Not at that. Not in 42. Not at Chance.
Gallinger played in the January Red Cross benefit game.
Oh, that could be.
In fact, all that whole sprout line accounted for all the Bruins scoring in the January Red Cross game.
Okay. I'll have to double check it. I'd gone through the database and looked for which Bruins had served. We have a list of all the players that served during the war, so I didn't see them.
Okay.
Those sweaters, they exist anywhere?
I've never seen one. And I read about them, and then I got the publicity photo with Jack Crawford. I found it on eBay. So I immediately contacted the guy, made an offer a little bit less than he was asking for. I I got it. And then Boston Traveler picture. I don't know why I didn't find that. I have access to the Boston Traveler. It didn't show up on any of my searches. So I was glad to see that. I had found, there's a number of game photos with them wearing the jerseys. I just happened to pick that one. But those are more common. But if you look at it, I mean, they wear 4 games, that's about 8% of the time, and they wear them, well, they don't wear them any longer. But when they were, you know, the last year, the alternate jersey, they wore them probably about 12% of the time. So I still think it's the first alternate jersey. So, and it's white scripted. If you look at the Sweater Museum, Danny pictures that as a gold jersey. So I wish Danny was here. So I'll have to send him a picture. Hey, JP?
Yeah, regarding alternate jerseys, there was a season where Ottawa and Montreal, I think, had purple sweaters, so Montreal had to play with a white sweater on their games against Ottawa. Something like that. You know?
Was that for, I don't know, was that for a whole season or was it just for a couple of games?
Games against Ottawa.
One game? Or all games against Ottawa? Oh, okay. Maybe that should be considered the first, I don't know.
But, yeah, the question I wanted to ask is, again, related to the poor attendance and, yeah, I guess, taxes and asking James to explanation. Is there any risk that it wasn't clear to the people that it was a regular season game, not just an exhibition game? That it was actually going to count as ante?
I didn't find any advertisements for the game. So at times they put little small ads in the sports section about games coming up. I didn't find any of those. There was a number of articles stating that it was a 3 o'clock game, and then of course they moved it to 3:30.
When I read the topic, well, the first time you wanted to talk about presenting Montreal, in my mind it was going to be an exhibition. It had been an exhibition game, so
Yeah.
it's the first thing that comes that came to my mind.
Yeah, so, no, those were, all 4 games were regular season. The other 3 that were played were, regular times. So, I try to figure out what type of tickets were bought based on, looking up ticket prices. I couldn't find how much each, the other $1.10 and $1.65, I don't know what the other prices were. I couldn't find any reference to what they were. I was going to take a look and see if I could break it down and sort of figure out what was bought and what wasn't. Pull up my algebra and use that for a change. Any other questions? All right, thank you.